now on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline, the voice of the Cougars, and frankly, a man who could do stats for a live college football game, all just in his mind. He doesn't need a computer. Greg, welcome back to the show. In sunny San Diego, how's the weather as you prepare for BYU in San Diego at the Slim Gym tonight?
A little rainy as we descended last night, but it has dawned sunny and gorgeous, as is usually the case here in San Diego.
It is the greatest city in America. I'll say that.
Says San Diego, but I'm not big on self-proclaimed nicknames, but it's all good.
Greg, based on BYU basketball's recent challenges and some really grinded-out type games, a loss at Pepperdine, the win against Pacific in double overtime, where's your confidence level tonight for this BYU basketball team as they take on a team that they should beat on paper, but the gym hasn't been friendly to the Cougars?
Yeah, you think about the league games BYU's played already. You kind of throw the Gonzaga game out, kind of an outlier. There haven't been too many, stress-free moments the rest of the way. Portland becomes a blowout at home once they took care of business there in the second half. But every other game has been these one-possession games, these real grinded outs. And I guess, welcome to life in the West Coast Conference. But it has truly been a trial and a test of the Cougars' tenacity throughout. And I'm hoping that the Pacific game ends up being a turning point of sorts. And again, a lot's been talked about the similarities or potential similarities between what happened last year with a BYU team that took a real tough loss at the exact same stage of the year at San Francisco, and then went on that 9-0 February run to kind of lock down their NCAA tournament bid. This year, that loss came not at USF, but at Pepperdine. We've seen the first game since be that grinder against Pacific, but you've just got to get that win. And they did. And it could be, and hopefully, a galvanizing force for this team here in the weeks to come. There's a chance to get on a nice little roll right here. You have Gonzaga at the very end of the season. Nothing can be taken for granted. St. Mary's at home is always a chore. But, BYU is favored to win pretty much every game they're going to play between now and Gonzaga. Yes, they were favored to win at Pepperdine, and you can't just go on paper, and that's always been the case in the WCC for BYU, yet the chance is there. And so we shall see if that Pacific win ends up being a springboard of sorts for BYU. And as we've kind of noted with a bit of a wink, Coach Pope has never lost a February game. He's 9-0, went on that winning run during the entire month of February last year. So here comes the first game of February in 2021 at a team that's struggling. Both teams this week are struggling, San Diego and Portland. And yes, San Diego has been a tough place for BYU to play historically. At the Slim Gym, the overall point margin for BYU over 9 WCC games in San Diego is BYU plus 1 point. And until that game last year, it was dead even. In fact, through 8 games before that Yoli Child TJ Haas game last year, BYU and San Diego had scored the exact same number of points at Jenny Craig Pavilion since BYU joined the WCC. So it's been that narrow.
That's crazy. Okay, I like a team that wins despite having issues, and that's what BYU is right now, 14-4. Despite the issues, BYU is 14-4. So what are the issues BYU needs to clean up a little bit to avoid stumbling? Because right now BYU is firmly in the bracket. That's awesome. Cougar Stats just tweeted only 8 teams have more than 14 wins right now. Things are going well, but where is there need to shore up something right now?
Yeah, the issues aren't too prominent. I mean, they're a top 75 team in offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency, effective field goal percentage defense. They're strong where you want to be strong. Where I personally think they could clean things up is in ball security, particularly early in games. It seems that BYU has had a few games in which the early stages were there to maybe kind of be had to kind of secure that game. And they weren't as secure with the ball as they needed to be. And now it didn't end up being like a 19 or 20 or 21 turnover game, but it's when they came at the stage of the game that offered BYU an opportunity to kind of pull away and pull ahead. I'll use Pepperdine as a good example just last week. Pepperdine opened the game 1 for 10 from the field. And you could have put a real dent in their hopes had BYU not been throwing the ball away, particularly in transition, when the Cougars were actually shooting a pretty good number. I believe the Cougars were 5 for 8, 7 for 11, something like that to start. At the same time, Pepperdine was going 1 for 10. but it was empty possessions. And I think that's been something I'd like to see BYU shore up, is that turnover percentage number, drop that number of empty possessions for BYU, particularly where games are there to kind of be grabbed and secured.
The voice of the Cougars, Greg Wrubell, getting set to call BYU San Diego tonight on BYU Radio. Greg, much has been said about the rotation for Mark Pope. It's 10 deep, and there's this idea that, well, maybe he's trying to figure some things out and shore up the roster so that that lineup isn't 10 deep. Maybe it's only 9 deep or 8 deep. I'm not really concerned about the number of players playing overall, but I am wondering which is the most effective 5 on the floor at any given time based on the results thus far.
Well, he clearly feels that he doesn't need to make dramatic changes right now. I mean, Trevin Nels stayed in the starting lineup since he entered after the Gonzaga game, I think is when they made that change. And it's really about, to me, how the roles are being occupied and who does what when they come in. They don't just come in to occupy minutes, but they have particular purposes when they do enter the game. I think we've seen Connor Harding really kind of blossom in his new role. Yes, it was a double overtime game, so there were minutes to be had, but he played 30-plus in the Pacific game. And so Connor's a good example of somebody that is filling a role, and part of that 2 deep that isn't a token 2 deep. I think everyone's got specific responsibilities when they check into the game. And I think, Jarom, we were talking with Coach Pope yesterday on the Coaches Show, and he actually mentioned that he'd sure like to get Hunter Erickson into more games. And so instead of shrinking it, maybe expanding it, trying to get Hunter into some games and get him some minutes. And of course, that would happen in games where things were a little more comfortably in hand. But Hunter's a talent and will be a very good player for BYU for years to come. But I'm really okay with how things are being run right now, rotation-wise. I just think they're in a really good spot. I mean, you can see, though, how, Trevin Nell can start a game and I think didn't play after halftime, maybe starts the second half and then left in the first few seconds of the second half against Pacific, and then it wasn't his game the rest of the way. And so, as Coach Pope said yesterday on the show, it really is kind of a feel thing as much as they want to embrace analytics and examine every, favorable lineup and rotation group and who does what with whom. It's a gut call a lot of the times. We've seen it work out more times than not this season.
Let's get a sense of these San Diego Toreros and what sticks out to you in terms of what they'll bring to the table tonight.
Yeah, typical of a 2-7 team, nothing really stands out in terms of what they're doing particularly well. They do a good job keeping teams off the offensive glass, and that's maybe one area in which there could be a difference tonight. BYU, of course, has tended to live on the offensive glass. These last couple of games, we saw some weaknesses that way. But generally speaking, BYU is that really good team on the offensive boards, and San Diego's been a decent team at keeping teams from just going to town on the offensive glass. Similar to St. Mary's and San Francisco, not to the same extent, but in that category, they're a team that likes to take away the three-point shot, does a good job of lowering that three-point attempt per field goal attempt rate. They're a top 40 team that way. St. Mary's and San Francisco top 15 teams. So San Diego's good at it. When teams do take threes, they tend to make a good number. So BYU can get the shots off. The percentage could be there, but the number of looks may not be there. BYU should expect to be a solid team inside tonight. And that could be, as much as San Diego, does a decent job taking teams off the offensive glass and clearing the defensive boards, I still think BYU should expect to have an advantage in the paint. They've scored 40-plus points in the paint, I think, in 7 of their last 9 games. They tend to have big numbers there. And I'll bring it back to the big three. I think it's really important that Barcelo, Averett, and Harms be on together. And just last week is a great example of that. In the Pepperdine game, those 3 players combined for 26 points on 29% shooting. Against Pacific, they combined for 60 points on around 61% shooting. One game's a loss and one game's a win, and there's absolutely no mystery as to which was which. The big guys have to play big and play well together. It's what won them the Pacific game, and it's what kind of cost them in Malibu.
Let's hope the ABBA backcourt is ABBA gold. Greg, great to have you with us. Enjoy the call tonight. We'll be listening. Thanks, man.
Always my pleasure. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Greg Wrubell on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Deseret First, you know why, we show how.